Rodney Boyd is here, people. Good morning.
Good morning.
What's going on, man?
You know, it's a bit, we're back to Jeff City, Jamie. I hate to take everybody away from California and focus back on the state capital, but all eyes on Jeff City. You know, I think probably one of the big shocking headlines this week is going to be the apparent opposition of the Senate tax bill by the Americans for Prosperity, which is obviously a group that is all about tax cuts, lower taxes, and tax transparency. So there's a lot of buzz about why the Americans for Prosperity came out against the Senate tax bill, what it means for the tax bill, can the issues they've raised be addressed, and where we go with our tax reform package in Jefferson City.
Why are they against it?
Well, I mean, their statement talked about a couple of provisions that were added in the committee, and one was the earned income tax credit, which is it's a tax refundable tax credit for low income working families, either with or without kids. That was added in the committee to address and appease some of the folks on the left who wanted to see some kind of tax break for the working poor. And then there's some other elements of it that affect the raise of the gas tax, which I believe was done to try to stave off a broader infrastructure tax. And so I think they don't like those provisions in part. I mean, that's what they expressly said. But I thought it was a lot to come out publicly against the bill, which is still a work in progress, because as you know, legislation in one chamber still has a long way to go, and you still got opportunities if you get it out of the Senate to make modifications and work with the sponsors in the House. So to flat out come out against it today was to send a pretty strong message that they don't want to see this version come out of the Senate. And I think it's going to put folks in the Senate in an awkward position as they try to figure out how to move this package out of the Senate. It kind of reminds me of the old saying, Jamie, about when you have perfection as the enemy of something that is good, and it seems like we might be getting in that space with this opposition, that the AFP wants a perfect tax reduction bill rather than a good bill, and in that scenario, do you get anything?
Well, and by the way, I mean, no offense to what's-his-face and the Americans for Prosperity, but does anybody really care what they think? What I'm saying is, like, does a normal average everyday Missourian going, the Americans for Prosperity, they don't like this bill. Like, do they even care? And if the duly elected Republican-led Senate supports this bill and moves the bill, what do they have to be afraid of from the AFP?
And you know what, Jamie? I don't know the answer to that question. I know there was a time early in the Tea Party movement where the Americans for Prosperity were mobilizing. They were getting people out. They were taking stances. And maybe their relevancy has waned. Only time will tell. I just think it was pretty surprising to see them come out publicly against the package so early in the stages where they could actually behind the scenes or work openly with the sponsors to make some of those changes.
Yeah, interesting. How is this Governor Greitens deal progressing? I mean, it looks like things have, aside from the only people obsessed with Governor Greitens at this stage of the game seemingly are the Republicans who don't want him there anymore and Tony Messenger. So, just trying to figure out, Well, and so you've got this new phase that's come out, and people have yet to determine what it means. There's questions about use of apparently, Attorney General Josh Hawley has weighed in. Now his office is looking into allegations of misuse of nonprofit data. I don't know what all this means. This is sort of a new wrinkle. It's separate and distinct in many respects from the indictment, but it is another issue that is emerging, and people are wondering where this goes. Now, early on, there was a ethics commission issue, Jamie, about using nonprofit information, and there was a small $100, I think, $100 or $1,000 fine. It was a small fine paid by the Greitens campaign, which seemed to have taken that issue and muted it and resolved it. And the fact that the fine was so small in light of some of the heavy fines that the Ethics Commission can levy showed that it maybe wasn't as serious of an offense as people thought. There seems to be some chatter now about use of other nonprofit lists for campaign purposes, which is a big no-no from the IRS and other perspective. But that's something that's coming into the conversation this week, separate and distinct. We'll see how it plays out. Yeah, I thought too with the other one. I thought they already paid a fine to the Ethics Commission for that.
They did. They paid a fine, and I think there is a new conversation about whether there were similar offenses with other nonprofits nonprofit list, and we'll have to see how that plays out.
Gotcha. All right, buddy. Well, have fun down there, and I know you get down there usually, but you leave today, come back Thursday.
Sir. Right, yeah. And Jamie, I want to say this. Thank you for focusing on Jeff City. We get so much attention around the water cooler about the federal government and other things. I think it's important for people to stay in tune to what's happening at the State House.
Probably affects their lives more than anything else, that's for sure. All right, Rodney Boyd, good talking to you at Rodney Boyd. Insider Talk on Sundays.